After evading law enforcement for more than 2 decades, the suspect in the 1999 killing of Blanca Arellano was arrested and extradited to the United States. Francisco Arellano was arrested in Mexico and has been convicted of killing his estranged wife after she was found dead in a Yuba City apartment with more than a dozen stab wounds in 1999, the Sutter County District Attorney's Office said. Francisco Arellano was found guilty of murdering 32-year-old Blanca Arellano on July 26, 1999. Blanca was found dead in her apartment on the 600 block of Queens Avenue. Arellano was the prime suspect, but authorities said he took off to Mexico with his and Blanca's 2 children after Blanca's death. In 2019, investigators received information that Francisco was living in the Mexican state of Morales. The Yuba City Police Department and the Sutter County District Attorney's Office worked with the Office of International Affairs to extradite Francisco. On June 22, 2022, he was taken into custody and extradited from Mexico on November 18, 2022. During the testimony, the District Attorney's Office said Blanca was stabbed 13 times in her chest, arms, and right leg. A phone cord was wrapped around her neck 4 times. Arellano said he acted in self-defense, prosecutors said, but District Attorney Jennifer Dupre said, there is no valid theory of self-defense in this case. Blanca's sister Sonia said, I think my entire family, we're just in disbelief that the day has finally come. Sonia and her family still talk about Blanca in the present tense. For Sonia, her sister is with her whenever she hears a song by the Bee Gees or sees New York, a place her sister longed to visit. She's still with us. Her body isn't here with us. A song will trigger a moment of our lives, something she used to say or something she used to do. Something funny that happened in the family gatherings, said Sonia. Blanca was a lover of music, often playing and practicing at home while they were growing up together. She listened to the Bee Gees as a teenager and had a natural skill for designs and sewing. Arellano is facing 25 years to life in prison. A discarded cigarette in New Jersey has led to an arrest in a 12-year-old murder case. On March 24, 2012, at 3:36 a.m., Julio Torres, 34, was shot and killed while sitting inside his vehicle in the parking lot of the West Reading Diner in West Reading, Pennsylvania. When the identity of the suspects eluded authorities for months, the West Reading Police Department formed a joint task force in May that year with the District Attorney's Office. Surveillance video from the diner showed Joe Main Case and the gunman holding styrofoam cups just prior to the shooting. Those cups, including one with a bitten-off piece, were collected from the crime scene as evidence. The cups and bitten piece were sent to the Pennsylvania State Police Forensic Crime Laboratory for DNA analysis. An unknown man's DNA profile was developed from the bitten-off piece, but didn't match any of the samples contained within existing DNA databases. Another DNA profile, which was linked to Case, was also found on one of the styrofoam cups. A DNA profile developed from one of the cups led to the arrest of 22-year-old Joe Main Case on May 9, 2012, who was eventually convicted for his role in the fatal confrontation. Investigators determined he was not the person who shot and killed Torres. Police said Case and an unidentified gunman had argued with Torres in the parking lot of the diner. Torres was then shot and killed shortly after. Police said there was no information that indicated that Torres knew Case or the unidentified gunman prior to the shooting. Authorities determined that the gunman was likely a man visiting from New York, but with no leads to go on, the investigation became cold. The person responsible for pulling the trigger and shooting Julio Torres was never identified, Berks County District Attorney John Adams stated. A break came when investigators uncovered a cell phone photo from 2012 that they believed showed the suspected shooter at a party hours before the homicide took place. Facial recognition software helped them identify the suspect in November as Vallis Slaughter, who was originally from Brooklyn, Adams said. Slaughter was tracked in December 2023 to Jersey City, where investigators determined he was living with his mother. Detectives surveilled the home for weeks until on February 9, 2024, they witnessed Slaughter discarding a cigarette butt onto the sidewalk before entering the residence. Detectives collected the cigarette and sent it back to the Pennsylvania Forensics Lab for analysis. In March 2024, their suspicions were confirmed when the crime lab notified the investigators that DNA from the filter of the cigarette matched what was obtained from the second foam cup in 2012, according to the district attorney's office. Slaughter, who Adams said is also a suspect in a homicide in Brooklyn, was arrested March 20th by Jersey City police at his mother's home. Just having that DNA sample isn't enough, but we were able to utilize technology to identify this individual, and now we have confirmed that identification with DNA, Adams told reporters. We are not going to give up, and if we can continue to pursue justice for the victim, we will do so. Vallis Slaughter, 39, was arrested and is set to be extradited to Pennsylvania for his first court appearance. He has been charged with murder, aggravated assault, and conspiracy, said Berks County District Attorney John Adams at a news conference. On February 7, 1977, a woman hired 14-year-old Maria Honzell to babysit at the Suncrest Apartments off of North Nevada. She had contacted Maria earlier in the evening, and everything was okay, but she did not return home until later that night. When she finally got back home, she found a horrific scene. Colorado Springs mother of two, Janie Kusleka, arrived home to find her babysitter, Honzell, dead with multiple stab wounds in her apartment bedroom. The two boys Honzell was babysitting, the children of Kusleka, were asleep and unharmed at the time police were called at around 11:20 p.m. When officers arrived, they found a 14-year-old Maria deceased with multiple stab wounds to the chest and neck. Kusleka and Honzell were neighbors and lived in the same apartment complex along the 540 block of Nevada Avenue. One of the boys told police he had gone to sleep at around 8 p.m., but was awoken sometime later by commotion inside the apartment. He told investigators he saw a teenage boy in an apparent struggle with Honzell, holding her mouth shut. The boy said he heard yelling and "Stop it" before the two entered Kusleka's bedroom. He described the suspect as being approximately 17 years old, 6 feet tall with acne, and wearing a fluffy coat and jeans. An autopsy report conducted in the days following Honzell's death determined she had died as a result of multiple stab wounds to the chest and a substantial wound to her throat. A homicide investigation was immediately launched by the department. Aside from the boy's witness statement, leads in the case were sparse and the investigation went cold for decades until the department's DNA breakthrough. Ford said while Kernan was named in initial investigation efforts, he wasn't considered a suspect around the time of Honzell's death. While the case remained cold for decades, DNA technology advanced. Although the Colorado Bureau of Investigation found no direct match from the male DNA profile discovered on the clothing Honzell wore the night she died, the department's cold case unit continued its search for answers. In 2019, the police department contacted technology company Parabon Nanolabs to conduct a genetic genealogy analysis of the unknown male DNA sample discovered on Honzell's clothing. As time passed and technology progressed, it became clear that this case had the potential to move forward using genetic genealogy, said Tracy Thompson, a detective with Colorado Springs Police Department's cold case unit. According to department officials, Parabon was able to develop and submit a genetic data profile of the unknown male DNA sample to the public database as a way to find individuals who share significant amounts of DNA with the unknown subject, officials said. 5 years later, investigators found their match, and Kernan was identified. It was determined he was a student at a local college at the time of Honzell's death and was an acquaintance of Kusleka, the woman Honzell was babysitting for. Prior to the Honzell investigation, the department has successfully used genetic genealogy in solving 3 other cold cases, according to Thompson. According to Kernan's obituary, he was 61 at the time of his death in Cheyenne Wells, located on the eastern plains near the Kansas border. Kernan was survived by a multitude of family members. He died of natural causes. With no clear signs of a break-in reported from the scene at the time of the initial investigation, the motive behind Honzell's attack and why Kernan arrived at the apartment remain unclear. Family members of Honzell in attendance Wednesday were emotional as members of the department, among other law enforcement officials, discussed the closing of Honzell's case. David Honzell, Maria's brother, addressed the room Wednesday morning, May 8th, expressed gratitude for the department's work, and shared the family's wishes for privacy. "I've been on the phone at least once a week for the past 5 years calling, looking for updates," David Honzell said. "Short and sweet, I appreciate you respecting our privacy. I would like to thank the whole department. This is a long time coming. Colorado Springs Police Department Chief Adrian Vasquez said, Maria was a vibrant and beautiful 14-year-old girl who deserved so much more life. I am very grateful that you trusted us, Colorado Springs Police Department, and we were able to solve this case, Vasquez said. Throughout the 4 decades, Colorado Springs Police Department detectives strived for justice in Honzell's homicide. Thompson estimates more than 15 detectives spent time on it, not including patrol officers, investigators with the Central Bureau of Investigation, and lab technicians who spent time piecing together evidence and developing forensic connections that went into identifying Kernan. An Oregon man has been found guilty in the 1980 cold case murder of a 19-year-old college student, all thanks to a piece of chewing gum. 4 decades ago, a medical examiner determined that Barbara Mae Tucker had been sexually assaulted and beaten to death. Now her killer has finally been identified. According to a news release from the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, 60-year-old Robert Arthur Plimpton was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was not convicted of rape, however, as prosecutors could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Tucker's sexual assault had occurred while she was still alive. On the morning of January 16, 1980, students at Mount Hood Community College in Gresham, Oregon, were on their way to class when they discovered 19-year-old Barbara Mae Tucker's body lying in a wooded area near a parking lot on campus. For decades, Tucker's murder went unsolved. Someone brutally took her away from us when she was so young and went on living their life after. Barbara's sister, Susan Patter, stated in 2021, Tucker was a sophomore business student at Mount Hood Community College at the time of her death. She was on her way to class on the evening of January 15th when she was spotted running out into the street from a wooded area. Witnesses recalled that Tucker was waving her arms as if trying to get their attention, but no one stopped to help. One witness reported seeing a man emerge from the wooded area and lead her back toward campus. The next morning, her body was found partially clothed, lying in some bushes. Nearby were her purse and books. Tucker was a tall, athletic woman. She had competed in a national basketball competition and won several awards while also pursuing a variety of hobbies, including sewing, knitting, and crocheting. Family and friends described her as goofy and ambitious. She loved the arts, wrote poetry and music, and planned to one day open her own craft supply shop. A major breakthrough in Tucker's case came when Cece Moore, a genetic genealogist who runs a group known as DNA Detectives, tested genetic material that was collected from the crime scene and plugged it into a database called GEDmatch. The analysis showed that Robert Arthur Plimpton was a likely contributor to the DNA profile. He was placed under police surveillance in 2021. As police began digging into Plimpton's past, a more sinister picture of the man came into focus. In 1985, 5 years after Tucker's murder, Plimpton was convicted of second-degree kidnapping in Multnomah County, for which he served a 30-month sentence. Between 1993 and 1997, Robert Plimpton served 2 more 6-month sentences for DUI charges and parole violations. He was also accused in 1997 of attempted sodomy and assault in an attack on a woman, although the case was ultimately dismissed as a grand jury found insufficient evidence to file a criminal complaint. While these incidents alone didn't point to Plimpton being Tucker's murderer, they showed that he was, at the very least, a violent and dangerous person. When investigators saw Robert Plimpton spit a piece of chewing gum onto the ground in 2021, they collected it and sent it off for analysis. The DNA profile developed from that piece of gum matched the vaginal swabs taken from Tucker's body during her autopsy. Plimpton, who was 16 years old at the time of the murder, pleaded not guilty. He claimed that he did not match the description of the man seen leading Tucker into the woods that night. While Plimpton's lawyers argued that there was reasonable doubt their client had killed Tucker, Judge Amy Baggio disagreed, saying at the trial, "To be clear, this court has zero doubt whatsoever that Robert Plimpton beat Barbara Tucker in her head and face until she died. He did." In February 2009, police responded to a call after neighbors heard a struggle coming from a man's home in Ridgewood, a neighborhood located in Queens, New York. Upon entering, New York Police Department officers found a significant amount of blood in the hallway of the home and discovered a deceased male face down in a pool of blood. The man, identified as 64-year-old Rosario Prestigiacomo, had been brutally stabbed 16 times in the face, neck, torso, and extremities. He also suffered puncture wounds to various areas of his body and blunt force injuries to his head, torso, and extremities. New York Police Department crime scene detectives collected blood swabs from the crime scene, and the city's medical examiner used the material on them to create DNA profiles for the victim and an additional unknown male. The second profile was entered into databases, but did not match any profiles currently in the system. The case remained cold until March 2022. That's when the District Attorney's Office and the New York City Police Department Cold Case Squad joined forces with Othram, a private laboratory, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to use forensic genetic genealogy to try to learn more about the second person. Forensic genetic genealogy uses genetic research and DNA analysis to try to identify DNA profiles. Othram was able to use advanced DNA testing to create a comprehensive genealogical profile from blood left at the murder scene, the district attorney said. Meanwhile, the New York City Police Department's Forensic Investigations Division used databases and public records to build a family tree of the victim to try and determine possible suspects. That family tree helped lead investigators to Anthony Scalisi, Prestigiacomo's nephew. Anthony Scalisi, now 41, lived in Boynton Beach, Florida. Detectives from the New York City Police Department and the Boynton Beach Police Department surveyed Scalisi in Florida, working to obtain a DNA sample. On February 17, 2024, almost exactly 15 years after his uncle was murdered, police were able to retrieve a discarded fork that Scalisi had used. That fork was analyzed and our DNA profile matched the unknown DNA found at the murder scene, the district attorney said. Matching DNA was also recovered from under Prestigiacomo's fingernail. United States Marshals, the Boynton Beach Police Department, and the New York City Police Department's Regional Fugitive Task Force arrested Anthony Scalisi on May 14th. He was extradited to New York City on Wednesday, May 29th. Scalisi's lawyer, David Cohen, said his client had pleaded not guilty. He is being held at Rikers Island. Scalisi faces up to 25 years to life in prison if convicted. Investigators say at this time the motive is unclear. The district attorney's office said this is the first time forensic genetic genealogy has been used to identify and arrest a homicide suspect in New York City. I formed a cold case unit to bring closure to grieving families and seek justice on behalf of victims, said District Attorney Melinda Katz in the news release. This case is an example of the perseverance and determination of the investigators on this and every cold case, and highlights the successful partnership formed between my office and the New York City Police Department Cold Case Squad. Defendants should not be able to evade justice no matter how much time has passed. The mother of a newborn girl found dead in a garbage can at a Phoenix airport in 2005 has been arrested after investigators dug back into the cold case using genetic genealogy. The newborn's body was found by a janitor in the trash in the women's restroom at Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix on October 10, 2005, wrapped inside a plastic bag with the red Marriott Hotel logo. It was determined at the time that the newborn, who was about 1 day old when she died, had not been born in the airport bathroom, but was abandoned there. A medical examiner later ruled the baby's death a homicide by suffocation, according to police. The infant became known to the public as Baby Skylar. Despite widespread media attention, no suspects were named, and homicide detectives said the case went cold after all leads were exhausted. But modern forensic testing on the baby's body several years ago helped law enforcement to identify a potential maternal match, which led them to 51-year-old Annie Anderson, the suspect now charged in the baby's death. She was visiting Phoenix in October 2005 for a real estate boot camp. Lieutenant James Hester of the Phoenix Police Department told reporters at a news conference. Anderson admitted during an interview with investigators in January 2022 that she was baby Skylar's mother, the Phoenix Police Department said in a news release. Investigators had traveled to Washington State around that time to execute a search warrant for Anderson after forensic tests were done several months earlier. Agents with the FBI Phoenix Violent Crime Task Force worked with Phoenix Police cold case detectives to arrange those tests in November 2021. In addition to reviewing existing evidence in the case, which included DNA samples collected from the airport bathroom that were determined to belong to the baby's mother, the investigators used genetic genealogy to help pinpoint DNA samples that could help find her. Once a potential match was found, they were able to cross-reference it with evidence originally discovered at the crime scene to identify Anderson as a suspect. At the briefing held in February 2024, Special Agent Dan Horan, who supervises the FBI Phoenix Violent Crime Task Force, described genealogy testing an identity resolution technique that uses a publicly available genealogy database to link family matches to an unknown profile. In baby Skylar's case, the genealogy tests identified someone in the family tree who subsequently consented to their DNA sample being used on a one-time basis to push the investigation along and eventually identify Anderson. Horan declined to share details about the relative. A grand jury in Maricopa County ultimately issued an arrest warrant for Anderson on a first-degree murder charge, and she is now in custody in Washington state, police said. Anderson is being held in Washington as she waits to be extradited back to Arizona. She is expected to face multiple felony charges when she returns to Phoenix, police said. Lester said Anderson is believed to be the sole suspect. He said police know who the father of the child is, but based on the totality of the investigation, we have no reason to suspect he has criminal culpability. Thanks for watching. If you like my content, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel.